Hello and welcome to Social Media Business, the podcast, which apparently is an old-fashioned word, about social media and business. Big surprise there. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Laurel. Good to see you
So
again.
our regular Dave is here, and we've got an interloper. Hi, Gorgeous. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I think Gorgeous was fine. I'll just take that.
All right, the gorgeous Cameron Riley.
Hi, and I will be smoking a cigar during this, but hopefully that doesn't offend anyone as you can't smell it.
I actually listened to a very funny podcast that you had around, must have been 6-7 years ago, where you guys were sitting around in a kitchen chatting, and you opened the whole session with, let's keep our rating at G, general rating, let's not go to the R rating. And immediately somebody said the F word, and then somebody else said something else, and then you're all talking about booze and drugs and cigarettes, and like 30 seconds later you went, well, there goes our general rating. I think we're in the X rating already.
Wow, those were the heady days of podcasting.
Yeah. What was that podcast called? It was like Web 2 or something.
Yeah, I think that was actually what it was called, the Web 2.0 podcast, the Two Web Crew. The Two Web Crew. That's right, yeah.
Cool.
I remember that. Dave, how was your changes move happening? What's going on with you this week? We learnt big news from you last week. How's it all working out?
Yeah, not bad. Flying down to Sydney this weekend to...
You don't sound very excited, Dave.
Well, you know.
Yeah, whatever.
I like to keep a lid on things. So, flying down to Sydney this weekend to look at places, hopefully find somewhere to live. So, that's the next stage. And then move in 3 weeks. Yeah.
Congratulations, Dave. I think that's huge.
Thanks, mate. Thank you.
So for those people who missed the news last week, Dave, who lives in Queensland, which is this vast forgotten state in Australia, if you're in America it's a bit like Texas, is moving down to Sydney. He's leaving the newspaper, the Courier Mail, and he's joining... Who are you joining again, Dave?
Guardian Australia.
The Guardian Australia.
Yep.
So that's pretty exciting. And he's bringing his family down, and he's got something like, how many days left? 14 days to make the move? Something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Not very long at all.
And what are you going to be doing for The Guardian, Dave?
Audience development. So it kind of is what it sounds like. Developing audience to grow, but also engagement and community and stuff like that. You know, find out full details when I get there. But I'm deputy to Mary Hamilton. She's the Guardian's head of audience development. She's
audience. It's just an interesting term for a newspaper audience.
Yeah, I was just thinking, can we maybe translate it into everyday Australian speak? What do you think audience development might be?
I think it will be similar to what I have been doing at the Courier Mail, which is engagement editor, which again is a little bit,
faffy.
Yeah, not specific, but building audience, engaging audience, and then I suppose analyzing audience metrics both across social and site traffic to maximize effectiveness and also feed that back to online teams and journalists and things for things they can do to better engage audience.
So using analytics and statistics to help drive traffic. We've just had a really important question come through. Cameron, Gary wants to know what type of cigar is it?
Good question, Gary. I can't see that question. Where are the questions?
On the left-hand side, there's a little blue button called Q&A.
Ah, right.
Or you can go to the main event page, and there'll be questions on there as well. I also keep an eye on Facebook and Twitter.
Oh, hello, Gary. Gary, this is, I will hold up the band for you because I've taken it off, but this is a Perdomo 10th anniversary Criollo wrapper. It's a torpedo size, probably 6 by 54, I'm guessing, grown and rolled in Esteli, Nicaragua, where I had the fortune of going on a tour of the farms and factories of Perdomo a few years ago when I was their marketing manager. Very nice, very. It's a good morning cigar, quite mild, a lot of flavour, very creamy, nice to have at 10 o'clock in the morning. Not too heavy.
I forgot it's 10 o'clock in the morning. What are you doing smoking cigars at 10 o'clock in the morning?
When is Cameron Riley not smoking cigars?
Well, I tend to have one a day, honestly, these days, and usually it's when I've got to sit down and I'm not typing for an hour. Usually if I'm having a phone call or a conference call or something like that, during the day I will come out to my deck and take that as an opportunity to enjoy one of the little luxuries in life. And if I don't get it during the day, normally I'll do it in the evening after dinner, but yeah. So I think, oh, we're sitting here, might as well enjoy myself.
And I believe that congratulations is due to you as well. Cameron, didn't you have a little baby like last week or something?
Yeah, it was. It'll be 6 weeks on Friday. Yeah, he'll be 6 weeks old.
Oh, wow.
Thank you. Yes, my third at this ripe old age. Having a new baby is different, but because I've got twin boys that are 14 and a little baby boy, Fox. But yeah, no, he's great. Thanks.
Okay.
Getting back to newspapers.
Don't forget, guys, if you've got any questions, just ask in the Q&A app or on the event page, and we'll keep track on them, that sort of thing.
So, Dave, you know that I've been a big critic of the news media for many, many, many years now. And I had a friend of mine who runs a real estate development company rang me yesterday afternoon, actually, and said, let me ask you a question. Are newspapers still going to be around in 5 years? And I said to him, look, it depends what you mean by around. Will the mastheads that we're familiar with still be operating in some form? Probably. Combination, obviously, of digital and print. Will they still have print? Probably. I said, if you ask me in 10 years, I'd say probably not. Most of them will be gone, unless they're like the Australian, where Rupert just runs it at a loss to use it as a political hammer. But you know, most newspapers can't afford to run at a loss. They're not supported by a movie arm. He was telling me that 5 or 6 years ago, he runs a real estate development company in the Gold Coast. He was saying like the Gold Coast Bulletin 5 or 6 years ago had like 250 real estate ads in a Saturday edition or something, and now they're down to like 50. And he was just talking about this steady decline he can see with newspapers as a marketing tool for real estate developers or agents. You obviously still believe that newspapers have some sort of a future, though, or you wouldn't be moving to Sydney.
Well, at the same time, I'm moving to a newspaper company that is at least a digital-only operation here in Australia, but newspapers are still highly profitable. It's just they're not the massive margins of 20 years ago, and I think I'm in the newspaper industry, or have been in and out of, so I'm sure many people could say maybe I've drunk the Kool-Aid, but I do believe that newspapers will be around longer than 5 years, and they are still profitable. It just depends on what level of profit people think are I guess people see the decline and take that as a loss of confidence in the market of newspapers. But despite the decline, they're still highly profitable. But it was 5 years ago that.
Can I just ask a question though? I mean, this is something I always come back to, and that is, what is a newspaper? Because you can't really talk about whether television will survive or whether films will survive or whether newspapers will survive unless you know what role they play in the community. And I think that idea that there are 3 or 4 entities in Australia who curate stories that are happening in the community, wrap stuff around them, and then distribute them, surely that model's gone. This sort of, social media disintermediates the mediator. It gets rid of the person in the middle. I can't see newspapers surviving that, but I do see them offering maybe value adds. Maybe you could talk about the value adds, Dave, that newspapers continue to bring to the scenery.
Well, I mean, 5 years ago we were talking about and discussing whether newspapers were going to be around in 5 years. And they still are.
A lot aren't. A lot of, I mean, not in Australia, but internationally, a lot have gone out of business in the last 5 years.
Yeah, true.
But aren't we also talking about the fact that Cameron was right, they will survive. The mastheads will survive. Channel 10 will survive, in spite of being on bridging loans and getting rid of all their new staff and stuff like that. But the way that they look is fundamentally different. I mean, I really see Channel 10 moving more and more towards running reruns of Gilligan's Island and Hogan's Heroes interspersed with infomercials. I mean,
who has a TV, honestly? I keep asking Steve Malk this. I mean, I haven't had a TV for 6 years, and I don't really know why people still have TVs anymore. I mean, I look at.
I know why. No, Cameron, just because you're wearing a demographic of one doesn't mean that because you don't read newspapers or you don't watch TV that people don't. But it's really nice to sometimes veg, not to have to fight and have to make decisions all the time about DVDs, downloading. Oh, Orphan Black. Have you seen Orphan Black? Awesome. Anyway, just, I mean, I quite like the synchronicity of turning the TV on and catching some sort of rubbish I haven't caught up with before.
I feel so sad for you, Laurel. And anyway, and look, I know people still do it. People tell me that people still do it. I'm saying is I don't understand why. There's just so much stuff to read, so much stuff to watch, and we're in the golden age of television, so there's so much great stuff to watch. Why you would watch the crap that's put out over television networks in this country boggles my mind. But anyway, as you say, I'm not that demographic, obviously.
Well, that's the thing. People still do consume it in large amounts, and there's still that mass media, mass audience that people are going for, and that's the same with newspapers at the moment. Whereas on the opposite side, you've got haven't taken off here yet, like Netflix and HBO original stuff that is hugely popular in that market and is perhaps more niche than the mass stuff you get on free-to-air TV. But yeah, like you said, we've got a TV, but we very rarely watch actual TV. We've got a Blu-ray player that allows us to, watch any of the catch-up TV that we want. So if there's a show we're going to watch off iView or something like that, then we'll watch it on iView. We don't even know when it's on real-time TV. So
just a quick question, because it's a really important one. Cam, what content do you watch? I mean, I'm assuming you're not always creating content, and I'm just wondering, do you have a TV series that you like at the moment? Is there any canned media that you watch or you read or you listen to? It's not user-generated, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my process.
Like what shows or what newspapers?
So I wake up in the morning. I'll tend to grab my iPhone, and I'll firstly look at Google News for about 10 seconds, just to see if a new invasion has broken out in some poor third world country by the
Zombie
imperialists.
invasion.
Yeah, or to see if somebody famous has died, and then I'll go straight to Reddit and I'll just read all my feeds in Reddit, and just scroll to see what the people are talking about. Then during the day, if I want to read something, I'll probably open up Flipboard and I'll read what some of the blogs that I follow are talking about, if I'm looking for some longer read stuff. And then in the evening, after dinner, Chrissy and I will probably sit down and watch an episode of something. At the moment, we're crushing the new season of Orange is the New Black on Netflix. We watch Game of Thrones. What else do we watch at the moment? Mad Men till it finished. So there's
What's Orange is the New Black? I've never heard of it.
Oh my God! Wait, Orange is the New Black is one of these Netflix-created series. That and House of Cards are the big ones. It's based around a women's prison, and it's sort of a black comedy, I guess, set in a female prison in the United States, exploring the lives and the backstories of these women that are in prison. Terrific show, really, really clever show, based on a true story. I mean, there's a real woman, Piper something. She got done for. She was like, upper middle class white girl, well educated. Piper Kerman, I think, and she and her lesbian lover got involved in running big amounts of drugs. She got caught and did a couple of years. And came out and wrote the story about it, and so it's sort of based on her story. It's by the woman Genji Cohen, who was the writer-producer of Weeds. But yeah, really good show with a lot of interesting, sort of political commentary on the U.S. prison system and the reasons women get put in jail and how they get treated and the conditions and that kind of stuff, whilst also being a comedy at face value. So anyway, yeah, look, we do have a couple of shows that we watch, but we tend to watch them on Netflix or Channel Torrent, because everything else is just too hard to sort through the crap.
And all those ads are just a killer.
Well, I tell you, here's something that if you haven't had a TV for a couple of years, and then you're at someone's house and they have the TV on and you see the ads, it is really genuinely disturbing, very, very off-putting, and I refuse to watch anything that's interrupted every couple of minutes with ads. It's an invasion of my brain. I absolutely cannot tolerate it. But up until 5 or 6 years ago, I probably wouldn't have noticed the ads, but now whenever I'm subjected to that, I find it offensive, genuinely offensive. And even the same with Hulu. I can't watch Hulu because they put ads in every 6 or 7 minutes, and I just I can't deal with it. So
there's some new intelligent ads coming through that'll use your PlayStation or the camera in your TV to do facial recognition and connect into your Facebook and your Twitter account, and then stream to you digitally the ads that are more appropriate for whatever keywords and stuff you've been talking about on Facebook and Twitter.
Honestly, Google can't even give me relevant ads with all of the information they know about me.
Yeah, but Google's keyword-based. Facebook is profile-based.
Well, I haven't seen relevant ads yet on Facebook or on Google, so I know that that's kind of the dream for a lot of advertisers, but advertising is fundamentally broken as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So on that.
Wait, one second. I'll come to you in a moment, Dave. I just want to pick up on something because people here.
You know who's in control of this show.
No, I know, but you mentioned Reddit, and so what I want to do is just flick up on the screen so people who are not familiar with Reddit know that this is where a lot of news companies get their stories from. Let's face it. And one of the subreddits, which is like a sub-forum that I follow, is How Corporate. And this is where a lot of the PR and marketing nightmares on social media stories come from. I don't know if you're familiar with it. And the app that I like on my iPhone is Alien Blue to follow Reddit. So for people who aren't familiar, it's like the community are submitting the stories that they think are interesting and important, and people vote on them. So it's a sort of I just wanted to get back to that just because you mentioned Reddit and people might not know what it is. Dave, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Okay. On that, and I completely agree with fundamentally advertising is broken, and particularly advertising online, and has been for a long time. But I'm interested, Cam, what then those shows that you enjoy watching, how do you see them being supported other than advertising? What can pay for it?
Well, with Netflix, we have a Netflix subscription.
Yep.
So they get paid via that. And, you know, look.
I can answer that.
As somebody who's produced content for 10 years without getting paid for it, it's an interesting subject for me to wade into. You know, I think that there are lots of models for people who will, you know, I think iTunes has proven that people will pay for stuff if you make it relatively inexpensive and easy to get and convenient. I don't think that advertising is necessarily the be-all and end-all for funding development of programming. Yeah. I could talk about this for hours, but I don't want to take over the show. Yeah, go.
Okay. Only because I wrote a book on the 22 revenue streams on media, social media. The first thing to know is that advertising comes from, there's always three parties in a community. There's the host of the community, like Facebook. Then there are the people who are the members of the community, in other words, the product of the community, the membership, the channel. And then there are the people who want to get to them. And advertising is the outsiders, the commercial clients trying to get to the members of the community, you know, through advertising. But there's all these other revenue streams. There's massive amounts of revenue streams. And I don't want to go through them all, but I do want to point out that classified ads used to be the rivers of gold. And it drives me insane that newspaper moguls say, oh, free ads like Craigslist and Gumtree took our money away. No, they didn't. eBay did. And if you look at any of the peer-to-peer sites like eBay or Etsy, you know, the ones that are doing anything from $1 billion upwards a year, I would say, you know, no newspaper in Australia owns a peer-to-peer economy. It's just nuts. And I know that Fairfax used to own an eBay competitor, now they don't. But there's heaps of revenue streams that newspapers could be pursuing, and advertising is the one that they've stuck with, and it's the dying one.
And a few of them, like APN, have gone out there, and I think Fairfax, they bought the eBay clone in New Zealand. Do they still own that?
No, sold it.
Right. Yeah, look, I mean, I've spent 10 years now watching newspaper and large media companies, television, etc. Every year when they replace their CEO, the annual ritual, say things are great, audiences are great, business is great, and then their revenues decline the next year and the CEO gets fired and they bring in the new guy who goes, everything's great, things are great, people are always going to watch, read, listen. It's been this, you know, cycle for 10 years where, at least publicly, they seem to be in denial about the fundamental economics shifting. And while their revenue streams just get white-handed year after year, I think they've got their heads firmly up their backsides. But anyway, that's good, that's healthy, it's natural.
Oh, there'll be attrition there, but I do think that Dave's right, that Dave, I'm just coming across to you now, that the online properties who are pursuing multiple revenue streams and multiple business models probably will make it a lot better than the ones that put up paywalls and try advertising in different models. What model do you like best, Dave? What do you think works?
I guess I like the offline options for, and I don't know, you know, some media are making attempts at making money on that, whether that's events or other things like that. Like, you know, when you have when you have somebody who can organize and set up a industry-specific event that generates either becomes a yearly or a regular conference sort of thing, that can, and that as that starts to gain popularity and I suppose industry clout, then that's something that can generate revenue. Whether that works as well for mainstream media, I know small publishers in the States have done quite well with that, getting into events management for community events, and these are small publishers in the States.
It's one of the major revenue streams for MySpace, which, by the way, is still going strong. I mean, we are talking hundreds of millions of dollars here from their events management side. But they built the community first before they ran their, what do they call them, secret location, black curtain events or something. They built a large community first.
Right.
Going strong, but of course News Corp couldn't figure out what to do with it.
I disagree. I think News Corp did exactly the right thing. They came in the minute the Google ad contract, $500 million, was announced. They bought it for less than that. They took all the money from that contract, and the minute the contract was over, they put it back where it belonged, which was in entertainment and music, and sold it to Justin Timberlake. Came in, took the money, left. No, they didn't. Yeah, that was it. They didn't know what else to do with it, but I think that was always the plan.
Sure, that's one way of looking at it. But,
I don't think you'd call that a success.
I guess what I'm...
Oh, they made a lot of money out of it.
Yeah,
that's more than they had.
Yeah.
But not long term. Moving on.
Now, go on, Dave. Do you want to finish up, and then we'll throw it back to Cam because he wants to talk about, I don't know, death of marketing or something traumatic.
Which fits with this conversation. Yeah.
We're already talking about death of advertising, and I think it ties in closely. It was interesting. I think I just put this out there the other day. I was listening to the 6 Pixels of Separation podcast, and somebody mentioning it was a little while ago now, but the statement that I'm sure a lot of advertisers and salespeople didn't like, but that advertising is the tax you pay for having a bad product.
Yes.
Now he attributed it to Seth Godin, but I had a quick search, and I think it might have been somebody else
who
actually said it.
I always tell my clients that advertising is what you do when you can't think of anything smarter to do.
Yeah.
It's kind of the last resort of a company that really doesn't have a marketing strategy.
Well, I think the difference between bought attention and owned attention is that, or bought media and owned media, is that owned media has a much higher probability of moving into earned attention. So you'd have to have a really cool ad for somebody to go, wow, that's a great ad, and then they've seen it the second and third time, they're over it. Whereas with, earned attention, you've really got to do something that's going to make people sit up and pay attention. But it takes time and resources for companies, doesn't it?
So Cameron, if you tell people, Cameron, that if they have to advertise, it's because they don't have a good a marketing idea, then how does that tie into marketing has failed?
Well, I'll tell you the example that I give people all the time. And I'll play it with you guys. I play the game called How Good Is Your Marketing? So I'll throw this out to both of you. Off the top of your head, and you're probably not the average audience, obviously, but off the top of your head, how many pieces of marketing can you name that you have received personally? And I'm not just talking about advertising, obviously, marketing across the spectrum. You've received personally in the last, say, 6 months that has connected with you in a way that it's discussed a problem that you have in your life and has it helped you learn about a product or a service that you previously weren't familiar with. and connected in such a powerful way that you've checked out the product or service and gone ahead finally and bought it, purchased it, because the marketing just had such a powerful effect on you. You went, wow, yeah, I do have that problem, and yes, that sounds like something that would make my life better. How many of those, off the top of your head, can you name?
About 5 or 6, I guess, but not a lot.
That's great. Most people I ask this of can't name one.
Yeah, but don't forget, I'm in the business of, for instance, reading blogs. So, and to me, the best written blogs are answering a question that I have. So I'll read their answer and go, oh, that's a good answer, and then I'll investigate a bit further and go, oh, yeah, that product does have the pros and cons that they talked about. I'll do the trial.
Great. And that, to me, is a classic example. But, most people will say they can't think of one. And so then when you add that to the stat that gets, bandied about a lot from that research firm whose name I can't remember because it's very long and it starts with a V, but, they reckon we are exposed to probably 5,000 pieces of marketing on average every day. And that's taking a fairly broad definition of marketing, but they reckon that's about the number. So over 6 months, 5,000 a day, I think that's like 900,000 pieces of marketing we've each probably been exposed to. And most people struggle to come up with one, let alone half a dozen, that really worked, that had an impact on them. I think that says a lot about...
We don't see it as being marketing. Like, for instance, advertising is spam if we don't want it, and it's simply readily available information if we do. So we don't always notice those sort of things. And I'm wondering if there's... otherwise, what you'd be saying is that marketing and advertising doesn't have an effect on our purchasing decisions. And as many people are out there going, oh no, I don't watch ads, it doesn't have an impact on me. I call bullshit on that. Absolutely, it's there somewhere at a intrinsic level.
We've just lost our G rating.
Yeah, I said bullshit. Oh well, go for it now.
Go for it now?
Yeah. You all sit here and smoke dope and drink and swear and do everything.
I'll go get the scotch.
Guys.
No, it's even too early in the morning for me for scotch. Yeah, look, there's that kind of we sneak in through your subconscious advertising and marketing. But that's not what good marketing is. That's playing on the animalistic side of the human brain. But, I mean, good marketing, really good marketing that's had a lot of thought put into it, I still maintain, is about genuinely understanding who your customer is, what problems they have, communicating with clarity and concisely how your product or service can solve that problem and make their life better in a way that connects with them so they go, oh, shit, yeah, I do have that problem. That'd be great if something could solve that for me.
That's only part of it. That's brand education. What we were just talking about was brand recall, and you can't dismiss brand recall. And I'll tell you the reason why, because if you think about it now, how people use when brand recall is really embedded in them is, I will Google that. I will Hoover the carpet. I will, and they use the brand name as the verb, and that is about answering the question that's intrinsic, but it is also about that subliminal brand recall thing happening as well. And you can't dismiss one without the other, can you? What do you think, Dave?
I mean, they obviously go together, but brand recall doesn't necessarily mean brand purchase. And when you're looking to keep a business going, you need people to be engaged to the point of feeling that relationship is worth investing in, and not just investing in a relationship, but actually investing money in this business relationship. So there's brand recall, and then there's actually laying money down on the table. So I think, yeah.
But you're doing the classic, which is marketing is not sales. There is a difference between the two, right, Cam?
Well, yes, but marketing should provide air cover for sales. I mean, in an ideal situation, when a salesperson meets a prospect for the first time, the prospect should go, "Oh yeah, that company, I've heard of you guys. I've heard good things about you guys and what you do," and there should be some awareness there rather than just, who are you again? Oh, let me give you some brochures. Marketing ideally should provide air support, pre-sales if you can, and then post-sales if you can't.
Yeah, it's awareness, it's education, it's entertainment, those sort of things. I just want to interrupt for a moment because Leslie White's asked a question. What do you think of YouTube's move to ban indie music artists as unapproved content as a move into traditional iTunes territory? Also, which platforms do you believe are best placed to host the latest clips that other cool kids wish to watch and hear? In other words, if YouTube doesn't want independent music anymore, where could people go? What should they be doing? What's YouTube thinking? Are you guys aware of this, that YouTube's done this?
No,
I did see that. I saw that announcement
Yeah.
on Reddit, but I haven't read into detail of it. I mean, it sounds like a sucky thing to do.
It's Google not being evil again.
Hmm.
Sarcasm, by the way.
Yeah, look, it does sound like a sucky thing to do. I mean, but the flip side is when Google does things like this, it creates opportunities for new players to stick their head up and provide a new generation of service. I mean, it kind of shits me that YouTube and Facebook still have the dominance that they have after all these years, that we don't have a range of players providing alternative services of note. So I kind of makes me happy when I see big companies doing evil things like that, because it hopefully will spur somebody to come along and create an alternative.
Okay. I do think that we'll always have this like aggregation of people. It's part of community building, and in general we move with the crowd. It's part of what human beings relating to human beings do. So whoever the incumbent is, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Google Plus, doesn't matter. It sort of becomes self-fulfilling. I'm just wondering who's making all these decisions, because iTunes still has independent musical artists. I mean, Gary Hayes puts up all of his music that you can download for free. So I don't understand what they're doing. But anyway, what else is news this week, guys? We're in the news section now. What's been going on out there?
I've been too busy thinking about moving. I haven't even looked at or read anything other than real estate ads.
Well, of course, the fall of a number of major territories in Iraq and the way the media is covering that is pretty important to me.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to take the time to do a deep analysis of the way the Australian media is covering these stories and look at how objective their coverage is, and compare it to the coverage of the original invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan back in the early 2000s, and just see what kind of genuine analysis is being done by the Australian media on that. Do you guys have any perspectives? Have you been reading much on it? I obviously don't read the paper, so I don't know.
Do you want to go, Dave? This is your territory. You go.
Yeah, I've been reading a bit on it. Not a great deal in the papers, or even different papers specifically, because I don't collect all the papers from around the country and read them on paper. But yeah, I'm not sure at this point what the Australian media response has been in comparison to the original Iraq War.
Don't call it a war, Dave. It wasn't a war. It was an invasion, an imperialist invasion, Dave.
And I guess the role that the Australian media played then, I would see as a lesser role than what the US media probably played, and I'd be interested to see how New York Times and things like that, who have been critical of their own coverage originally, and how they failed to ask the right questions and hold government to account and that sort of thing. I'd be interested to see how they are approaching it this time, if they're doing it any differently.
I've been saying for years, and I've been trying to get somebody to fund this. If there was another startup that I'd do, it would be a site that actually did this, that analysed the Australian media on major issues like this, or asylum seekers, or climate change, on a constant basis, and analysed the objectivity or the bias of the coverage for each of the major news sources in this country, what the politicians are saying and what they said a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, a bit like Politico plus Media Watch plus, I don't know, some sort of, fact checker. And also just, creating a service for the Australian public to be able to get a sense for how independent / subjective / biased the coverage is across the media landscape. I think that would be a valuable service for us in this country. I don't know you make any money out of it, but I'd love to get someone to give me a couple of $1 million so I could build an infrastructure to run it.
Well,
wouldn't there be semantic engines now that you could run media through and check for bias? I'm pretty sure they're fairly well formed.
Yeah, possibly.
We should have a look around for some of those and see what we can find. I mean, I think Media Watch and what's the ABC one called? You mentioned it before. Check the facts or something.
Yeah.
And there's university students doing their stuff too, but I don't know.
Yeah, and the Guardian has what do they call it? Guardian Data Check or something. You haven't been there long enough yet, Dave. They've got something too. I saw them mention in some article I was reading this morning. But I often get a sense when I scan the Australian media that there are obviously agendas going on here, and it would be great to be able to get an overview of it. I had Wendy Bacon on my podcast a couple of years ago, and she was talking about a report that she put out in 2011 on the bias across Australian newspapers over their coverage of climate change. You guys ever seen that report? Wendy Bacon, who I think's with New Matilda now. I'm just pulling up the link here, see if I can pull up the high-level data. But I mean, it showed, that the Australian, for example, the percentage of stories where they were skeptical about climate change versus positive or neutral was like 90% of their articles and editorials over the course of a year were slanted negatively. And I think Fairfax were actually fairly balanced, surprisingly. But props to Fairfax for that. So, that kind of... But this was a one-off report. Yeah, that's it. That kind of, analysis, but on an ongoing basis, backed up by data. I'd love to see something like that so I could see who was saying what and what their track record was.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, in all the back and forth and argument that goes on between conservatives and liberals and things like, left liberals, not Australian Liberal Party liberals, between determining fact. And I think it's always been interesting being part of the media, how even running a site like that, calling people out for perhaps not being factual or being biased is cause for argument in itself. When the facts should speak for themselves, but unfortunately, even the facts are under contention when you have bias and agendas necessarily. So it would be interesting to, I think that there'd be appetite for that sort of bias and fact checking across media, a website like that worldwide, not obviously not just Australia, in the same way that a fact checker works on politicians.
I've got this. I've got the summary of this report on the climate change one. It says they found that between February and July 2011, negative coverage of the carbon policy across 10 major newspapers outweighed positive coverage by 73% to 27%. I mean, that's the state of media coverage in Australia at the moment. And, I don't think the Australian public generally is aware of this kind of systematic bias on certain topics. And I think
Can I just say, Cam, I think they are. And the reason why I think... No, just because the reason why they are is because all the surveys that have come back recently show that journalists, dentists, and used car salesmen are at the bottom of the pile for respect in the community and things like that. Yeah, trustworthiness.
On the trust spectrum, yeah.
But they know. They really know.
I think they're even...
And can we also talk here about the real numbers? Because if you look at... I mean, my problem with a newspaper is that it's an aggregation. So there's a sports section and a business section and an entertainment section. And if you were actually to take the whole newspaper and then just choose the parts that people were reading and then which bits they were trusting, and then if you look at the online subscribers, I mean, I think the Australian's got, 45,000 readers online, and the Australian Financial Review is like at 22,000 subs.
It took subscriptions?
Yeah. I know with the Australian, the number of people who read it's higher than the subs, but with the Australian Financial Review, it should be the same number, because if you've got a subscription, you've got the online version as well. So we're not talking here. We're not talking huge numbers anymore. This isn't. This isn't where I guess people are drawing their news from unquestioningly. Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because the people who do draw the news from here tend to be politicians, so they look very closely at the sentiment about what's going on in newspapers, and I think that concerns me. And the reason why it concerns me is because they often are trying to appease a dying media when they have much better analytics made available to them about what people are talking about and how they feel about those things than a newspaper survey that tells them, 65% of people don't care about climate issues. You only have to go online to know, where did that number come from? Oh, it came from a few hundred people that were rung in the middle of dinner, and they went, no, I don't care about climate, and hung up on the interviewer. Like, you just can't do those manual focus groups anymore, and they don't really serve you as well as running proper analytics tools across platforms that tell you in much greater detail where the sentiment is on a particular political issue. Dave, you're doing analytics and audience engagement. Do you run sentiment analysis around what they're looking at? Like, is it good enough just to know that people are reading the article, or do you want to know how they feel about the article?
No, there's no sentiment analysis specifically. I mean, there's some gimmicky little tool that somebody introduced to at one point on news network articles that has to be manually put in. So I saw it semi-regularly sometime last year, but haven't seen it for a while, which was just basically a small toolbar within the article, just embedded, that people could click, 4 options about, this makes me, happy, sad,
Happy, sad, angry, whatever. Yeah.
whatever. I mean, it was
So,
fairly. It wasn't
going to
actual
Cam's
analysis.
point, sentiment analysis is an incredible tool if you want to do real marketing. So, for instance, with the NAB, they have a customer service center reminding people social media sits better in customer service answering the question than it does in marketing trying to broadcast out crap. But the NAB has a wall with a sentiment engine that is pulling out all the keywords and the discussions, and they saw the wall go red because it was negative comments online. And when they went to look at them, they realized they'd changed one of their forms for small business, and everybody was complaining with the way this thing was being done online, and it was having a ripple effect. So you could see throughout the community their anger and confusion. So they immediately wrote a blog post which explained, and did a video explain how to do this new thing online, and then you could see the sentiment of everything going back green again. And I think, if I look at current newspapers, we're still very much in product journalism, whereas almost everybody else has got into real-time process-based conversations online. And I'm wondering if, maybe that's an answer for Cam, in the future, is that companies should be looking at what Cam specifically is asking, what he wants to know, and then ensuring the right answers are placed in front of him, not as advertising, but as a discussion point, maybe. Process, not product. What do you think?
I'd like to see that same kind of sentiment analysis being used to determine the sentiment of the population around issues like climate change or reinvading Iraq or whatever it is, political issues. I've got a client who's a database guru firm, and I tried to get them interested in building a product like this last year, where we, analysed the Twitter and Facebook streams of Australia around certain key political topics, particularly leading up to a federal election, to see how the people felt about these issues based on how they were expressing themselves online. Again, I'm sure there are certain technologies that exist to do this today, but I don't see that. And maybe I'm missing it, but I don't see that being used a lot in the Australian media. Based on what people have been saying on Twitter in the last 24 hours. Here's what Australians feel about climate change legislation or asylum seeker legislation. Dave, is that kind of stuff prevalent in the media?
Yeah, I think you do see it occasionally, but not that often, because there isn't necessarily as much conversation happening around it, or it's really got to be massive for mainstream media to listen and to pick up. And they may not pick up themselves. They may pick up because it's come across Reddit, and that's not an excuse. That's not a reason not to be listening and do it. There's plenty of opportunity, and you do see it after things like budget, where you'll see a story about this was the reaction from the public on Twitter, and documenting some of the stuff that the public sentiment on Twitter. But that's still quite superficial in that it's just just a quick wrap of what the conversation is, not necessarily a informative analysis of the narrative that that the public is looking at. And more often than not, when you see mainstream media reacting to something that's happening on Twitter or Facebook that's gone, that people are having a conversation about, it's not necessarily high newsworthy. It might just be, wow, Twitter went into meltdown over what happened on The Voice last night, something like that.
It strikes me that is, a potential future avenue for media players is to be really providing deep, genuine analysis and coverage over what the people are saying about these big ticket item issues. You know, again, asylum seekers, climate change, you know, our military involvement, the budget, the economy, whatever it is. I mean, you know, this stuff is happening now. We have millions and millions of people in Australia on Facebook and Twitter talking about these sorts of issues every single day.
Yeah.
And yet I don't believe that Australia's media is really leveraging that to reinvent the kind of conversation that they should be having with the audience. To me, it's just to lay down misère.
Yeah, and I would agree with you there. I think that part of the problem is probably having the expertise within media organisations to gather and analyse the data. Not that you shouldn't have people there who have that expertise, but you see it happening a lot in academia. For example, like Axel Bruns and the QUT social media group doing huge data analysis around politics, election, budget, TV conversations, things like that, and they're fully dedicated to doing that, and media should work with them more, and I know media have been talking specifically with those guys about getting some of their, you know, Australian Twitter News Index stuff more robust to help news understand what's happening.
But can I just say, let me just put this up on the screen. All of the services already have this stuff in place. So, for instance, on Facebook, I can see the number of Australians that in the last, I guess, it's actually 30 days, have talked about climate change, global warming, climate or greenhouse gas, and I can put more words in if I want to see the number. So out of 13,200,000 people that logged into Facebook in Australia in the last 30 days, I can see the number of people that talked positively or neutrally about it. And I don't understand why more people aren't using these big data tools, because it doesn't have to just be on political things. I mean, I could put in here, you know, how many, I don't know, girls between 13 and 18 talked about Lady Gaga, and the number will come through here for free. I mean, this is an amazing big data tool. Why aren't politicians and journalists and others using it more?
Well, guys, I mean, you're following what Nate Silver's doing with 538, his new startup?
Yep.
No.
Nate Silver's the guy who accurately predicted the last presidential election result based
538.
Based on data analysis, and he's now launched a media startup a few months ago, 538. Yeah, sorry. They are creating a media site based on data analysis. That is sort of the foundation of what they're doing. Let's mine big data and figure out what stories need to be told based on that. It's not all that they're doing, but that's sort of the core of the business, of the startup. I'd love to get something like that off the ground in Australia, because I think that's to me the future of media is to be analysing where are the people at, what are the people talking about, what do they care about, what are they passionate about, and how should that influence government policy, how should that influence corporate direction, what can we learn about where we're heading as a society based on what people are talking about and how they feel about certain issues. I don't think political parties are leveraging that in this country, and I don't think the media, and I think corporations aren't leveraging it enough. I mean, following what people are saying about the NAB is one thing, but there's so much more that you can follow as a corporation by big data analysis.
Dave, what do you think of data-driven journalism versus the old gut instinct of the editors and the journos?
Well, I mean, you know, gut instinct is always there, but that's another thing that's been talked about heavily in media and digital media innovation. You know, professionals for quite a few years now is how to better use big data to inform coverage and finding new stories how to analyze that big data to pick out the important and salient points. So it's definitely not it's not a discussion that's not being had or ignored. It just depends. It just depends at which organization or how innovative they are as to whether that's happening or not. So you see, one of the things I've liked about The Guardian for a long time is their data journalism. They've run the data blog for quite a while, documenting how they work with big data. But then you've also got startups in the US, like, I'm going to forget what they're called now. They won an award a few years ago for their data interpretation and coverage. I think it was Homicide Watch. I can't remember exactly.
You mean the Knight Centre? The Knight Centre for Journalism runs all the courses and stuff on data journalism. They're probably one of the leaders in data journalism.
Yeah. I mean, they lead stuff, but and they do a lot of great stuff in teaching and supporting journalism initiatives. So they're heavily involved with the Online News Association, ONA, who do all the digital journalism awards and conferences and stuff, and the Knight Fellowship for digital journalism coincides with ONA, Online News Association stuff. And so there's a lot of innovation happening. It's just we don't necessarily see it as much here in Australia at the moment. Definitely not as much as I'd like to see. But yeah, there's a lot of really, really great stuff happening around big data and working with that with media and how to use it better. There you go.
Is this the mob you're talking about? The Global Editors Network, they have the Data Journalism Awards, and they work with the Knight Foundation and Google on that?
No, not them specifically. I mean, the Knight Foundation...
No, this is GEN, the Global Editors Network.
Yeah, no, I wasn't talking about that specifically.
Okay.
Talking about Online News Association, which does a lot of great stuff as well, but it's all... There's a lot of stuff happening.
If I was a newspaper online, and it doesn't matter if I was BuzzFeed or if I'm Upworthy or News.com or Fox or whatever, I would be really worried about Google. And the reason for that is at the moment Google gives news a premium place in search, just like they used to do with Wikipedia, but they've pulled back on that a bit now. And so when you're searching for something, there's a news.google.com, you can search just for the traditional news sites and so on. If Google ever removes that sort of protective custody of news and places them really probably where they should fit in the stream with regards to how much SMO, social media optimization, how much discussion's going on online, a few articles from time to time will come top of search. But newspapers in general will potentially, not have those top spots anymore. That's what people won't be clicking on. And in some ways, I'd like to see this happen because I was looking into citizen reportage of Syria. Do you know that there's between 8 and 12 bloggers are killed every month in Syria for reporting the news? And we never hear of them. I mean, going back to your statement about, how the news presents wars and things like that, and it just breaks my heart that we talk about embedding journalists, but when we embed them with an army and guns around them and protective gear and armored cars. These bloggers are going out and risking life and limb in Mexico, around the cartels, in Syria, about what's going on in Syria, and They don't even get recognised in the award ceremonies. It just upsets me. What's that, Cam?
Sorry about that.
Oh, well, bye, Cam. What do you think, Dave? Do you think citizen reporters should be a bit more covered in media and what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it would be good if they were, and I'm not sure.
Because that's the opposite of data journalism, isn't it? It's being an embedded citizen reporting on what's going on in your area is the opposite of data journalism.
Yes.
What's that echo? I don't know. Cam, are you okay, darling? Dear Cam? Sweetie?
My neighbour
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
I think
Hello?
he's muted himself.
Yeah. Hi?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Can't hear me?
What did your neighbour have to say?
Did I?
We can hear you now. It's okay.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh,
You're
you
all
can
good
hear me?
now. What did your neighbour have to say? Did
Oh,
your
no, my
neighbour bring
neighbour-
over a nice cake for you?
No, he brought over this, which I cut with him the other day. It's a just a piece of wood that we're using as the centerpiece of the table, as a hot plate thing. You put a hot plate on it, just to. That's all.
You have such
My lovely
an
old neighbour
exciting
just made that
life,
for me
Cam.
and brought it over.
Anyway,
I
we're
do.
a little
I
bit
do.
over time because we started a little bit late.
So yes.
Did you guys want to do or say anything in wrap up? Is there anything you have a burning need to express?
No.
No, Dave?
No.
You're eager to get back to packing, are you, and moving?
No, I've got to get to work.
You get to work. What about you, Cam?
Yes, I'm at work. Yeah, no, look, I enjoyed the chat, and Dave, I look forward to seeing what you do with your audience engagement stuff at the Guardian. I just, I would love to see Australian media impress me. That's what I'm waiting for. I haven't been impressed by the media in Australia for a very long time, so.
You got it, Cam. I'm on it.
Somebody impress me, please.
Go, Dave.
I'm on
Team
it.
Dave.
Do something interesting.
Always.
Yeah, we're counting on you,
Cam,
Dave.
You're going to share your cigars with us?
Thanks, Laurel. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Dave, and we'll see you next week. Thanks,
See you,
buddy.
Cam.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. There is a playlist on the description field on YouTube and on the events, and I will post that up again for you so that if you want to go back and look at some of our last week's and the weeks before, I think we've looked at return on investment of social media. We've looked at dealing with negative criticism. We've looked at all sorts of things. So if you want to have a look at those, there's a playlist up online. And sooner or later, probably later, I will get these up on iTunes, both as a video version and as a voice version. Thanks to Leslie and Gary and Samuel and the other people who listened in today and asked questions. We didn't get to all of your questions, but I do collect them and we do come back to them again, and I'll reference you and I'll also ping you and let you know that they've been answered. So till next Thursday, 11 o'clock, have a great week, everybody. Bye.
Yeah.